What is up, everybody? Let's do, he's going to say it. Let's do a quick Hell Talk with just me, your boy, just me, Matt. And hopefully this one is actually quick because I really only have two things that I just wanted to rant about. Um, the first being the Destroyer equipment that's coming out or that is out, I guess. It's pre-release, but that's coming in Smash and Destroy. And then the other is the Phoenix Bystander that is being released at HeroClix for Huntington's this year. Um, yeah, I just kind of want to go and talk about what I think about each of those game elements and their impacts in both competitive events moving forward and just events in general. So let's start with the Destroyer equipment. So the Destroyer equipment is it confuses some people because they don't realize that it's an equipment and they think it's Destroyer has always been a character up to this point. But if you just think of it essentially as the Asgardian Iron Man armor, then it kind of makes sense. So it's similar to the motorcycle, the Hell cycle, and the glider in that it has 3 clicks. And when it's equipped to a character, you pick which click number you want it to be on, and then the character gets the powers and things on that click. Um, Similar also to, I guess it's more similar to kind of glider and also Hell cycle, but the destroyer pretty much only has 1 click. So the first click, I'm not looking at anything right now. I'm just sitting here on my couch, but the first click I believe has like psychic blast, toughness, and it doesn't modify your defense at all. So it's for 15 points. Um, for 15 points, getting toughness and psychic blast is pretty terrible. You would, if you want psychic blast that bad, you should just equip universal weapon. It's not worth paying 5 points extra for toughness the vast majority of the time. Second click, I think it gives you toughness, close combat expert, and 1 extra defense. It's a little better, but for 15 points, there's better things. Again, if you want close combat expert, just play Bucky's arm and save the 10 points on toughness and an extra defense, because you get super sense on a 6 and all that stuff. It's not worth it on that click either. The click though that is absolutely insane on is its third click, which gives you invulnerability, and it gives you giant sized. So it gives you everything that comes with being a giant, all the great size abilities. And it gives you +2 defense, which to me is wild. If I think for 15 points, if you take the best characters in the game that don't necessarily require themselves to have a very specific equipment, for example, Collector's Trove Juggernaut, you kind of sort of have to play the Crimson Gem on them. Or, things like Ulysses Bloodstone kind of has to have the Bloodstone for free on them. Just because, it being free is pretty wild. But, or characters that have marksman, you're always going to put trick arrows on them. But for the vast majority of pretty much many other characters, if you just asked yourself the question of, would, imagine looking at this character's card and imagine that the defense value on every single click was increased by 2. And then increase the character's cost by 15 points. Would that be worth it? And just that by itself, the answer should be a resounding yes. Absolutely. I will almost always pay 15 points to increase this character's defense by 2 on every single click. um, but as I mentioned, the Destroyer does other things. It also gives you invulnerability, and it also gives you giant size. So invulnerability, as we all know, in the competitive scene, isn't really a reducer. It doesn't really ever reduce damage dealt from an attack. Um, Generally speaking, toughness and vulnerability and impervious all do the same thing, which is they don't, this character doesn't take damage from regular poison. This character doesn't take knockback damage. And this character, reduces damage dealt that, by things other than attacks. So, if Colossus mind controls you, you can reduce the damage that the 5 damage that he's going to deal you after resolutions. But you are not going to ever reduce damage from an actual attack, generally speaking, because most teams should have penetrating damage built into virtually all of their main attacks. And then the attacks that don't have penetrating damage don't need it for various other reasons, such as precision strike and whatnot. So yeah, but again, giving characters invulnerability is good, like I said, for those couple reasons. But as I'm going to get into in a second here, it's also really strong when you give it to characters that can reduce penetrating damage. And one character to me sticks out as the obvious candidate for that. And again, we'll get into that. I think I've already spoken about it in previous episodes, and if not, then that means I've talked about it with with the people that are probably listening to this anyway. So you've already heard me say it. But again, and then as we mentioned, it gives great size, and great size, or just giant size, gives you giant size, which gives you the great size, or the key phrase or whatever ability. And that's a very strong ability to have for a couple reasons. One, as we all know, when you're playing Ares on your sideline, you will very often play Pim particles on your sideline because the character that you are planning on using Ares with, the Blades Claws Fang character, you want to give them giant size for that attack so that they can use giant reach and see over other characters so that you can quote unquote Ares bomb virtually, every character on your opponent's team or a good chunk of them and get a massively impactful attack uh, and kind of just win the game. I've mentioned this before, but Ares is the strongest zero cost game element in modern age currently. Aside from potentially Destroyer, but I think Destroyer is stronger than Ares when it comes to its um, kind of ubiquitous strength. Destroyer is good on every single team. I think you're going to see Destroyer, the equipment, on every single team simply because of the +2 defense. I think that's wild. But like I said, it's also specifically good on a few characters that that are going to stand out and really shine above the rest. Again, put your predictions in the comments below. But they're kind of obvious. The pieces, one's a piece that's already done extremely well, and one is a piece that I think was on the fringe of doing very well, and I think will do well because of this equipment. But there's probably tons of pieces that are going to be insane because of this Destroyer equipment. So for example, let's just take one. This is not even one that it's not one of the two characters that I was just describing. But let's say Camo, right? Camo Prime, um, great candidate for a character to use with the Ares bomb because he's got traded blades, claws, fangs. So very often you would use pin particles to make Camo a giant. Camo can then, being a giant, can then carry somebody when they use charge and all that stuff. And so you get a lot of extra mobility out of that combo. And then you use blades targeting everybody on the opposing team. And uh, and then Camo has penetrating damage with his blades, and his minimum blades is 5 damage. No, sorry, 4 damage, right? He's got printed 5. So 4 damage would be the minimum. So if you're hitting virtually everybody on your opponent's team for 4 damage, that's pretty wild. But if you put destroyer equipment on him instead of something else, I guess you could put we've seen teams put motorcycle, we've seen teams put trick arrows. I think we may have even seen teams put longsword on him just because it increases that blade's minimum roll with the Ares bomb. But if you put destroyer on him, he automatically gets the giant size, so you don't have to use pin particles anymore. So that saves you. It doesn't save you necessarily any points overall because again, destroyer costs 15 and pin particles only cost 5. But if you were gonna equip Camo with something anyway, then it could save you a combined points overall for your team. And more importantly, it saves you a sideline slot. So you can put something else on the sideline instead of pin particles. So that's the main strength of Destroyer for Camo. But then again, we already talked about it's Camo, got the Ares bomb. But then we're also got to mention it gives you willpower on a 3 through 6, which is it's huge. It's huge. So willpower on a 3 through 6 on any character is huge. And then still we're not even talking about the +2 defense. So you're gonna Ares bomb with Camo, and then you're still gonna be sitting there going, I have a 21 defense. We're not even bringing in the idea of perplex. Just perplex his defense up once. Go Ares bomb. Say you got Space Ghost or something. +1 attack, +1 defense. Send them out on an Ares bomb. Nuke your one's team, and then let's say they had Chair Panther or something, and they took away your cannon event one shot because you always play cannon event with Camo. So then you go, all right, well let's say you didn't KO their Chair Panther with the Ares bomb. Then you just go, all right, well, so I can't make Camo immune, but I have 22 defense. So go ahead and try to roll 9s, 10s, 11s, whatever you need to hit. And just so it's not going to be easy for your opponent to really retaliate. So again, that's just one example of where Destroyer really shines. And I think you're going to see it on every competitive team moving forward, just because of just how strong it is. Because it's so strong. And again, we can get into this. Oh boy, this might not be a quick one, isn't it? But because it's so strong, I feel that the meta will be forced to react to it, similarly to the Scott Porter meta, because Scott Porters were so strong. Things were reactionary measures were made by the meta to help counteract the strength of Scott Porters. Not that they really worked in the sense that they made Scott Porters not viable anymore, but other things became viable because Scott Porters were so strong, such as Major Logan. If everybody is playing Scott Porters, then Major Logan is really good. But additionally, when Scott Porter's, since they were modifying everybody's attack and everybody's defense, characters like Myrn were also extraordinarily good. I mean, of course, when Myrn first came out, he was just insane because you could modify his range and then virtually say any character, every opposing character on the map can't modify their combat values. So that wasn't good. But even after his nerf of saying that it's within 4 squares, he was still incredibly viable because virtually every character that would make a close attack on the opposing team couldn't modify their combat values. So the characters that Myrn really had to look out for at the time, one of them was Camo, and the other one was Colossus Prime, because both of them had a printed 12 attack, and they both had printed 5 damage, and they both had super strength, which is exactly what you need to have in order to KO Myrn in one attack, which is 5 damage and a way to guarantee knocking him back, so that you can hit him for 5 damage to that stop click, and then the knockback damage would KO him. So those were really the only 2 figures, and they still are in modern age, and so they still are really the only 2 figures that can somewhat deal with Myrn the best way. So with characters now always pretty much going to have +2, if not +3 defense, does Myrn come back into play and say, look, if my opponent is going to come and try to hit me with what's likely going to be a close attack, is it not worth playing Myrn in order to prevent them from modifying their attack before they hit me? On top of after they make that initial attack, if they're doing the alpha strike, on top of them just sitting there going, okay, now I'm going to have a ridiculously high defense value against all attacks, which is that's the key thing about Destroyer. It's +2, just straight +2 defense against all attacks. So it outshines Hel Cycle and Motorcycle in the sense of, the combat reflexes, even from Glider. So it outshines it with that. But I just also thought Juggernaut from Collector's Trove also KOs Myrn because he deals the 4 damage, and then the 2 penetrating is not an attack, so it gets past the stop click. That's another character that deals with Myrn, and he has a 12 printed attack. So yeah, so there's other characters I guess out there as well. But yeah, the vast majority of teams that I've seen playing Juggernaut also play Colossus. So I guess that's also a good thing. So if it's ways to counteract Myrn. So yeah, so if Myrn is played, he will definitely there will definitely be other characters out there that can deal with them. But then again, you never know. I mean, what if, for example, what if you're playing Myrn and you put the Destroyer, let's say, what if you're playing him on your main force and you put the Destroyer on Myrn? You know what I mean? Now it's kind of, it's kind of, it's kind of really, it's kind of difficult to KO Myrn at that point, because now characters like Juggernaut don't KO him in one attack because the 4 damage isn't penetrating. Now characters like Colossus don't kill him because the 5 damage isn't penetrating. And he also wouldn't take damage from the knockback. So really only Camo can KO him in one attack. No, again, because the knockback is not penetrating. So, so that's tricky. That is tricky for sure. Myrn with the Destroyer armor becomes a tricky character to take down. Of course, there's definitely ways around it, but are there ways around it that are being used? And of course, there's always some way around it, but I just feel like Mern is going to make a serious comeback. I I don't feel like you even need to play any ranged characters with Mern. Um, of course, it's nice if you do, but I don't think you need to build your team. I don't think you need to play anything as serious as Hadara Yao. I think you could play anything, even characters that have 4 range or 5 range, are still just fine. Um, but I mean, I, I I don't think it's necessary to play a ranged Alpha Strike with Mern. I think just Mern is going to be one of the necessary options. There's other options, of course. There's Jennifer Kale and there's other stuff. And I know Maverick and Miguel mentioned this in the previous Hell Talk because one of the questions I posed to them was uh, it was about the destroyer equipment. Whether or not it being the best equipment in the game, and then options to deal with it. But I personally think that Mern is going to make a comeback. Um, I don't think I will. I'm going to have a very hard time building a modern age competitive team without Mern. Previously, for those that know me, before Mern kind of fell off the map, uh, I felt that it was virtually impossible to play a team without him. I felt like every single team that I played without him, there was always moments where I'm like, man, I wish I had Mern because I would have either hit that attack or my opponent would have missed, or I would have been able to, deal with, this energy shield deflection plus hindering bonus. And it's just like, there were just so many ways where I'm like, man, my opponent has +3 defense. And holy smokes, if I had Mern, I would have been able to neutralize that and actually been able to land an attack. And again, as I mentioned now, since virtually every single team, every single competitive team moving forward, because of destroyer equipment, will have a character that will have +3 defense. And you would imagine, and I don't think anybody would feel, otherwise, is that the character that's going to have +3 defense will have a 19 or 20 printed defense. So, I mean, it's like imagine Colossus Prime and you just have a single perplex somewhere, you know, and or just some other way of modifying his defense +1, and he's got destroyer armor. So he's just walking around with a 23 defense, which doesn't exist really. I mean, a 23 defense team doesn't exist. Or it hadn't existed, didn't exist previously. Um, I mean, there were very few teams that had 20 defend, and then you can modify here and there past that. But as a single figure having 23 defense, I don't. I've personally never faced a team where again, just a single character by themselves has 23. Um, without defend shenanigans, so that nobody is replacing his defense with a 20 and then having it, just be +3. Just his defense is 20 +3 because destroyer armor is 2 +1 from somewhere else. And it's kind of like there isn't an attack value that you can get to where you can still reliably hit an attack. Even characters that have 12 attack, or even 13 attack. I mean, it's like, is there a character in modern age right now that that's reliable to play that has a printed 13 attack? There probably is one, and it's just not coming to mind. But a lot of the go-to picks in Modern right now have an 11 or 12 printed attack. Very few have 10, but a lot of them have 11 or 12 printed. So when you're talking a 15 attack is generally the highest we can get to. I mean, we're talking like Kongs and Camos, Colossuses, Juggernauts, all that stuff. Um, a 15 on a 23 is still an 8 or better. So you're more likely to miss than hit. It's, doesn't it seem like you're like, man, if I had a Mern right now, this would be easy. 15 on a 20 is easy. But 15 on a 23 is like, yikes. So why should Mern also come back? I mean, Mern should also come back because of what we just saw win Adepticon, which was a 22 defense collector. So that team had collector having a 22 defense because he's got a printed 19, and he would get a flat +1 from the broadsword construct, and then he would get +2 from close attacks, and then +2 from range attacks because of the Captain America shield equipment and because of motorcycle. So what happens now when collector says, look, I'm going to have a flat +3 because of destroyer and because of broadsword construct, and then I still have 5 points left over for another equipment, whatever that may be. I mean, a lot of people are probably, again, gonna go with the flute. And I know Maverick and Miguel talked about this in the last episode, but it's mixing the best of both worlds. Generally speaking, people went with the shape change route of collector, being the flute, being the dream ruby, and what have you. Or they went some sort of, offensive route, with trick arrows and what have you. Or they went with, the championship Adepticon team that Logan used, which was 22 defense. So we already know the 22 defense team is good. And now it's better because now you can get 22 defense and you can get the 50-50 shape change roll. And again, plenty of things beat the shape change collector. And I think that's one of the reasons why we didn't see any shape change collector teams do well. I don't think none of them made top cut. And I'm not sure if, again, I'm not looking at my computer or anything right now, so I'm just trying to recall with memory. I don't recall if any of were used that had winning records, like a 3-2 record, but missed top cut. So I'd have to look that up. But regardless, none of them made top cuts. So I feel like most players in the field figured out how to defeat the shape change collector, and the answer to that is just Battle Fury. You either need to have a character that has Battle Fury, like Colossus Prime, or you need to have the Zenzi Pog so that you can give another character Battle Fury, which against a collector team is good on both ends of kind of the spectrum, where you can give Battle Fury to your own character so that when they attack, they don't have to deal with Dream Ruby at all. Or you can give Battle Fury to Collector so that Collector can't make any range attacks. And that could pretty much prevent Collector from making attacks at all on the following turn. So it Zenzi Pog, really works well against those teams. On top of, like I said, things like Colossus Prime and whatnot. So I feel like the just a straight defense collector is the way to go. It's what won, and like I said, and the team just got better. So not only will you moving forward, not only will you have to deal with a 50-50 rollout for collector with shape change, you're also going to have to deal with a 22 defense. And then if teams really want to get cheeky, especially post rotation, the Chase Iron Man from Smash and Destroy is pretty annoying when used with collector because it does give collector impervious, and um, so that gives him another rollout technically because he has invincible. So, and you can use the reduced penetrating damage with the damage reduction of impervious on top of uh, the fact that on top of the fact that Iron Man also gives the enhanced reducer to all Stark Industries characters, and Collector has the scientist keyword, so he will also be given Stark Industries keyword. So that way he will reduce damage by 3. So he's going to reduce 3 penetrating damage with from any attack, and like I said, and also have that additional reducers or rollout. Excuse me. So he's going to have a shape change rollout. He's going to have a impervious rollout, and he'll reduce 3 damage, 3 penetrating damage on top of even if he misses the rollout. So you're from the opponent's standpoint, you're pretty much forced to attack and KO the Iron Man first, which isn't that difficult. So I don't think uh, it's going to be a crazy a crazy thing to do. But I mean, it's still at the end of the day, um, it's still a collector team. It's still 22 defense. It's still going to have a 50-50 rollout unless you KO the bystander, the Chitari Pog bystander, and then Pulse Wave collector, so he loses the Scroll's team ability from wild card, assuming he has the flute. But like I said, there's just if I feel like there's a lot of things that you kind of need to have on your team moving forward in order to deal with this, because you're like, you have to have a way to deal with shape change, or else shape change collector or just Dream Ruby on any character that isn't Ghost Rider kind of ruins your day. And then you have to have a way to deal with +3 defense because it will be on every team. +3 defense will be on every team moving forward. And if you don't have a way to deal with it, I feel like you not necessarily automatically lose, but I mean, come on, it's a dice rolling game. It's all probability at the end of the day. And if you are planning on rolling tens consistently and having that be your winning strategy, I just don't anticipate you doing well on average. So again, if how are you dealing with +3 defense on especially on a tentpole character where it's like the only way you're scoring a significant amount of points is by KOing that tentpole. Um, yeah, I feel like it's gonna have to be a Mern. It's gonna have to be a Jennifer Kale. I don't like Jennifer Kale as much because it requires that you play a man thing, and then it's more points than Mern, and then it also pretty much feeds into the fact that you're going to be playing plants and stuff and blah 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 blah. But Destroyer is wild. Um, so yeah, so I mentioned one of the characters that I think Destroyer is going to really shine on, which is Collector. And I think that kind of goes without saying because Collector is already a good team. It's a championship winning team. You could argue that Logan's team won Adepticon because nobody was playing Mern. And if somebody had played Mern, or I mean, he himself said it. There are teams that just counter that +3 defense, but um, but nobody was playing it because nobody was anticipating going up against a +3 defense collector. So again, it's not just going to be collector that's going to have +3 defense moving forward. It's going to be a character on a team, but it's going to be on all of them. So you're really going to have to bring something to deal with it. And whether or not you main force Mern or you use him as a butterfly option, that and again, I know Miguel, I think, mentioned that in the previous episode. I personally don't like Mern as a butterfly option moving forward because Chair Panther exists, and he's so prevalent that if Mern is your only option and your only kind of tool on your team to deal with the character that has +3 defense, if he's on your sideline, that means most of the time you will not be able to play him. You can't bring him onto the field, and if you can't bring him onto the field, you right back into that situation I was talking about. It's like, I hope you practice rolling tens or better, because that's how you're gonna have to win this game. Um, it's so you just you're like, probably you're not gonna win. What else do we gotta talk about? Oh, the other character I think you can shine on. So as I mentioned, collector is better with Destroyer. So other than Burn, what could you do with Destroyer? Not just Destroyer on collective teams, Destroyer kind of on, and I think a character that really hasn't seen much play. There's a couple players that do try to play, but I think broke through that. About why that could be the case. I could be wrong on this, but I feel like Legacy Odin, he has the tools to get the job done. So number uh, Destroyer for Legacy Odin, which is huge. So the best equipment in the game, in my opinion, even at 15 points, is now free. So wild, that's wild. But uh, what does Odin lack that the Destroyer gives? So first thing is Odin lacks move and attack. He only has sidestep. Destroyer doesn't grant move and attack. Womp womp. So he doesn't gain too much in terms of alpha strike potential with the Destroyer, but he gets giant size. So there may have been scenarios or situations where you weren't able to attack the character that you wanted to attack because you couldn't draw a line of fire to them. Um, Previously, you probably gave Odin the Mjolnir equipment, I would guess, because it gave him improved targeting characters. So you said like, well, that's how to that's how to solve that problem. Maybe you gave him Stormbreaker. I don't know. Um, but I feel like if you wanted to hit the character that I want to attack the character that I want to attack. So let's make sure that I can draw a line of fire to them. So let's give him Mjolnir, right? I feel like that would be the more obvious option, but who knows? Maybe it's Stormbreaker. I don't know. But now you give him Destroyer. So Destroyer gives you giant size, so you can see over standard size characters, and you can um, attack. You can attack the character you want to attack. Unfortunately, this also means that other characters can see you and can attack you back. But as we talked about before, range characters really aren't a threat right now. So Legacy Odin might be the only main range threat in the game. Again, it's a question mark. Not 100% sure on it, but we'll see what other characters come out in the future. But Odin also has he's got a decent defense value up top. He's got 19 defense. So the Destroyer giving him a 21 flat, at top click is very nice. And finally, the invulnerability that you get with Destroyer is also really good with Legacy Odin. Why? Because as I mentioned before, invulnerability is really good on characters that reduce penetrating damage, and Odin does that. So one of Odin's biggest weaknesses was that, yes, while he reduces penetrating damage, and yes, on his first couple clicks he has impervious, which is impervious plus reduced penetrating damage is really good. It's the best defense you can possibly hope to have. The downside is that maybe your opponent has a couple attacks with precision strike, or maybe you just get unlucky and you don't succeed on impervious, and your opponent is able to knock Odin for some significant damage, and then lo and behold, Odin all of a sudden has super senses on his dial, and you're like, oh. Basically, my opponent is now the next attack my opponent hits me with is going to kill Odin, because they're not. There's no way they are going to uh, squander the opportunity to deal Odin 6, 7, or 8 damage in a single attack. Um. So yeah, and then usually Odin kind of is toast after that, even though he's got was it Hugin and Munin and the other crows to give him extra defense and to reduce the attack and stuff of opposing characters and things like that. It's got all that, um, but as I mentioned, it's just pretty much he doesn't have a reducer, and he is 150 points. So your opponent will do everything in their power to score those points, and I would imagine on more occasions than not they do. But no longer, because you have Destroyer. You have invulnerability, so you reduce 2 penetrating damage, and you can't be outwit. So you're basically in the clear. It's very, it harkens back to Legacy Thanos, where Legacy Thanos just had invulnerability, but he could reduce penetrating damage, and then with the gems you could get super senses. So it's that you have super senses, you have invulnerability, you reduce penetrating damage. It's a very reliable defense, to have. So I feel that the Destroyer for that specifically, that fills a huge gap in uh in the kit that Legacy Odin was missing, was that in those middle dial clicks when he only has super senses, Destroyer is wild for those clicks. On top of the fact that when Odin is knocked down to those clicks, and when he only has basically when he has less than a printed 18 defense, you could bring out Hugin and Munin if they're not already on the map, and then you could always replace Odin's defense with the 18 of whichever bird it is, and then the Destroyers +2 would bring his defense up to a 20. So as long as the birds I think it's, again, I'm not staring at his card, but I believe it's as long as the birds are on the map that he can replace their values. I don't think they have to be like within a certain amount of squares with him. I don't know. Even if that's the case, just just work with me on this. Um, but as I mentioned, so Odin will have a flat just 20 defense on any click. So as I mentioned on his first, I think it's just his first click, he has 19. So his first click, he'll have a 21, and then all the others will have at least a 20, which is very nice. As we know, 20 defense is very nice. Colossus Prime understands this very well. The um, the other thing, as I mentioned, that Legacy Odin does very well. Or actually, I didn't mention this. The other thing, as I have yet to mention, that Odin does very well is for free. He can turn off the effects of equipment on a single character and also give them Earthbound neutralized. So the very strong character that we just mentioned before, the Ultra Chase Collector, gets hurt a lot by Legacy Odin. Um, I don't know if I really need to go into why, but when a character is equipped with 3 different equipment and suddenly can't use the effect of any of those, and then can't use improved targeting or improve movement at all, it's like, whoa, suddenly they can't do much. So uh, Legacy Odin teams don't need to play Mern because whichever character that has basically whichever character has the Destroyer uh, equipped, Legacy Odin can just choose them every single turn for free, and then they wouldn't be able to use the effects of the Destroyer equipment. And like I said, in the case of Ultra Chase Collector, wouldn't be able to use any other effects of the other equipment. Um, and and therefore, uh, that +3, I say +3 defense. It's true for the case of Ultra Chase Collector, but for other characters, it would just be the +2 defense from Destroyer. They wouldn't get that anymore. Which I think a way of taking away that +2 or +3 defense for whatever character has it, I think is going to be necessary moving forward. So that is an option, and it's an option that deals with, as we mentioned, it deals with Ultra Chase Collector very well, which you will have to do. I feel like your team in a competitive environment has to at least have a shot at beating Collector. Um, if it doesn't, I don't think your team's going to do that well because since Collector won Adepticon, I feel like a lot of people are either going to um, copy that team moving forward, or as I mentioned, not necessarily copy it, but um, use the updated and better version with Destroyer. Um, uh, or just some other version of Collector because Collector is so strong. But yeah, like I said, I think Legacy Odin deals with him very well, and I think Legacy Odin also deals with any other character that is playing Destroyer, or that has a Destroyer equipped. So I don't know. Maybe maybe there might be uh times where you have Odin versus Odin matchups, and then each Odin is telling each other that they're not worthy. So it's like Odin's looking into a mirror and saying that he's not worthy. It's that's the Odin midlife crisis. It's just like he's realized that he's old and he looks and he's like, I'm not worthy, And so then he takes off his Destroyer armor and he just gets Earthbound neutralized and he feels sad. But I don't know. But again, I feel like Legacy Odin can do well, uh, and does so much better, um, because not only, like I said, you're not required to play Mern with those teams, um, but because he can take away the +2 from Destroyer, you'll still have to deal with perplexes and other things like that. But because Odin also has Outwit, you do have the potential of, turning off the destroyer from whoever has it, and then outwitting the perplex on another character that has it. But I don't know. Um, like I said, I, I'm I'm like 60 or 70% sure that Legacy Odin is going to do significantly well moving forward because of the destroyer equipment. Um, but because yeah, he was used in the past. He wasn't used, super effectively in the sense that in terms of results orientated, analysis. But yeah, I think he definitely has potential moving forward, and it's because of destroyer equipment. So when an equipment is so good that it has the potential to make a character meta, then not only is that obviously one of the best equipment in the game, from that, as it's a candidate as best equipment in the game, just because it makes other characters potentially meta, and then yeah, it's the best equipment in the game, um, without necessarily breaking the game. That's the other thing too. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it's it's the best equipment in the game without breaking the game. So it doesn't violate any rule or doesn't require any errata initially, because it doesn't do anything that makes the game unplayable for either player. It just it just says, look, I am a consistency driver, and that's what competitive teams want. It says I'm going to make it it's going to be consistently inconsistent for you to attack me and for you to hit me. So that's one. That's what Destroyer does. It makes you consistently attack the opponent by giving you great size willpower. So you are reliably attacking your opponent every turn. So that's consistent. And then it also, again, the invulnerability, while it makes Legacy Odin very consistent, most other characters it doesn't do much other than, like I said, say, oh, I don't take poison damage, or I don't take knockback damage, or things like that. So it doesn't do much else, but just +2 defense and giant size are they're huge consistency drivers, which is exactly what competitive teams look for. And I don't think any other equipment aside from perhaps Bloodstone is as consistent in terms of its results in every single match. So that Destroyer will produce results in every single match, even in matches where you're against a Mern. Just by positioning around it, perhaps you can still have effects that that are worthwhile. I don't know, but like I said, we'll see. I think you're definitely going to see a change in the meta because of Destroyer. Um, but I still think you're going to see people play Destroyer. Similarly to when what's it called? When Bloodstone came out, I was like, oh, okay, so nobody's going to play Heart Shape Herb anymore. But that's really not the case. It's just kind of you can still play Heart Shape Herb, and then you just say, oh, who on my opponent's team has the Bloodstone? Like I just have to either KO them or unequip them, and then my Heart Shape Herb works while my opponent's doesn't, because I still have my Bloodstone equipped. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a race to unequip or steal or KO the character that is equipped with the Bloodstone. It's kind of like a mini game in the game. So it's interesting, but yeah. So it doesn't so similar, like I said, similarly to how Mern, or sorry, I'm sorry, yeah. Let's come on. Let's think about what we're gonna say before we actually say it, man. You know what I mean? Uh, Similarly to how Bloodstone didn't prevent players from playing Heart Shape Herb, so they still played it, and then it just became a race to who can KO the Bloodstone character first. I don't think Mern or other characters, even Legacy Odin, or whatever, Jennifer Kale, any of those of the like, I don't think they're going to prevent people from playing Destroyer. I think then it just becomes a race to For example, if both players are playing Destroyer and then both players are also playing Mern. So it's like, oh, okay, well, currently my Destroyer doesn't really do anything other than like great size. But as soon as I KO the opposing Mern, then my Destroyer becomes insanely strong because I get +2 defense on this character for the rest of the game. And there's nothing they can do about it. So uh so yeah, I think there may be situations like that um moving forward, but who knows. um did I say everything I want to say about Destroyer? It's just, can you tell that I think Destroyer is awesome? I think it's a fantastic equipment. um and yeah, because I think it's fantastic because it's so strong. It's not difficult to get. So players of all skill level and all competitive level, however competitive you want to be, you should play Destroyer. At least try it out. I don't think anybody's going to be disappointed with the results of using Destroyer, assuming they use Destroyer on its third click. If you use Destroyer and you play it on its first click and you're like, oh man, Psychic Blast isn't really that great, and then I apologize that you used Destroyer incorrectly. But if you use Destroyer on its third click, I think you're going to be impressed with the results, regardless of this your skill level, regardless of the skill level of your opponents, regardless of what type of event you're playing in. I think you're gonna enjoy using that equipment. Um, but yeah, and oh yeah, we didn't even we mentioned it a little bit for about how for Legacy Odin Destroyer is free, but he's free on any Asgardian. So literally any character that ever is printed, while Destroyer is modern age, I suppose, if you're that type of player, which I am, but any character that's standard, any standard character that's able to be assigned equipment that has the Asgardian keyword, suddenly it's like, well, yeah, imagine on every single click he's got +2 defense, or he or they or whatever. Imagine they have +2 defense for their whole dial for free. It's like why the heck would I assign him anything else? I don't know. It's so wild. It's such a good equipment. But I think that is it. Racking my brain here sitting on the couch. All right. Let's now talk about the Phoenix Bystander. So the Phoenix Bystander is going to be available for a prize, or maybe it's participation. I don't know, whatever. But it's going to be first available at the HeroClix for Huntington's event this year. Which, I mean, if I'm being honest, I have no idea when that event's actually happening. No idea. It could be happening tomorrow, and I wouldn't know it. Um, but nothing. I'm not trying to knock that event, like to say like it's so uninteresting to me that I couldn't care less about when it's happening. I know it's happening this year. I know it's happening relatively soon-ish, I suppose. Um, because I know that the ROC cup points, which that's what the Heroes for Huntington event is. I know those expire June 1st, I believe. So the event has to happen within the next month. Um, but anyway, Phoenix Bystander. So I'll put like kind of like you know the bluff, the bottom line up front, which is I don't I don't think this bystander should exist. And I know I'm probably getting a lot of like boos from the crowd right now, but and especially from those that uh were part of designing, the bystander itself. But I I'm trying to I want to put this in the context of that these opinions that I'm sharing aren't directed towards any single player or any single group of players, or really just anything in general. I think it's just they come from a position of, I'll just call it like problems of player created game elements in general. So for those that are unaware, in the league that I run, or league that we put together in Hell, let's call it, the home event league. We often make custom game elements for our players. In fact, the event, I mean, it probably, when you're hearing this, the event may have already taken place. But tomorrow, so I'm recording this. It's like 10 or 11 p.m. It's 11 p.m., a little bit after 11. So tomorrow we're having an event where the winners of those events, the winners of the event will be able to create a custom bystander. But we also have events where winners can create custom legacy cards. And I speak from experience when, well, I guess I should explain the process of these first. Is that when a character, or I'm sorry, when a player does create a custom bystander or legacy card for our league, I act as quote unquote whiz kids, in the sense that they, the player will have the idea of which character to create the bystander or the legacy card for. They will have the ideas of, how to revamp, whether if it's a legacy card, how to revamp any special powers that character has on their dial, and any traits they want to give them. And then in the case of a bystander, same thing. Who do you want it to be? How do you want to best represent this character as a bystander? Do you want them to have any special traits or special powers? And like that. Um, so yeah, it's uh, and then I'm moving forward. Those bystanders and legacy cards are legal for a lot of our league events, and this may initially seem unfair to players who, on the outside, don't already have those custom game elements. But for anybody who hasn't shown up to any of our events, I give out these custom game elements virtually to everybody who shows up. So there are exceptions, because obviously, if when I run out of the run that I've made of custom, of a certain custom game element. So for example, let's say someone makes a custom bystander, and let's say I make, I don't know, we don't have a crazy amount of players that come to our events. So let's say I make 15 or 20 copies of this bystander. The player who wins, or who creates the game element, usually gets 4 copies of it themselves. So let's say that leaves me, so 16 other players get, this game element, get a copy of it. Let's say I keep one for myself. So 15 other players. And like I said, when we're not even considering the fact that the player who created them, like I said, gets 4 copies of it. So if it's a unique game element that they've created, then they have 3 copies that they can give away, they can sell, they can trade on their own. So like I said, so if taking away me and the player who created the game element, let's say if it's a unique game element, so everybody really only needs one. So let's say 18 other players in this example can get this custom game element. I mean, if we're only getting 8 to 10 players on a regular basis for our events, that virtually means that anybody else who shows up will get this custom game element, eventually. There are examples where players have showed up and they see a game element that I don't have anymore, because it's been like over a year since I made them, and I actually did give all of them out. But if you're regularly showing up to our events, even if you are not the player who creates the game elements, you will get them all. So I understand the fear of missing out, of of not getting the custom game element, and then, oh, since I didn't get it, it's kind of like, why bother showing up to any other events? Like, you'll get them, and especially you'll get them, especially if you communicate with the player who created them, and you can obviously work out a deal and um, get those game elements yourself. But like I said, they're legal for many of our events. Um, some are some are stronger than others. Some are pretty strong in the sense that they're quote unquote broken. Some aren't. But I don't think any of them are underpowered. And then but like I said, they're just interesting things to use for certain events. And the events where they are legal, I clearly mark in the event description that they are. And if you're interested in finding out what they are and what they do, they're always listed in our Discord. So if you I don't know, if I have no idea if I linked our Discord, or if it's even possible to link the Discord in YouTube or whatever. I don't know. Who knows? But if you know who I am, if you know who any of our players are, and any of our in the Hell group, any of our regular players, contacting any of us, we can get you a link to the Discord if you're not already a part of it. And then you can see all of our custom game elements there. And if you're interested in getting any of those custom game elements, you can either, like I said, show up to any of our events, and the newer game elements will always be available as prizing, usually as just participation stuff, just for showing up. And then the older game elements, if you were interested in using any of them, you can always borrow them from me. I always at least save one copy of each of them for myself. And then if you're interested in getting any of them for yourself, I'm almost certain that one of the other players in our group, either still has extra or just has one that they're willing to sell or trade to you. So, a long-winded way of saying, don't worry about not having uh, any of our custom game elements. So, huge tangent that was completely unnecessary, but I did it anyway because I felt like it. Jumping back to my original point, which was, uh, I am, in the process of, and continually in the process of creating custom game elements for players. And I uh, very often see that players they want to create a custom game element that's very strong. And what usually ends up happening is, if we go the route of creating a very strong game element, is that all of the other players quickly realize that that custom game element is very strong. And sometimes it's so strong that there's almost a guilt factor in, if I use it, then I'm going to be quote unquote that guy. So I'm that guy for using the very strong game element that's custom only for our league. And therefore nobody really kind of uses it, and it goes both ways. So if a character makes something that's not very strong, nobody uses it because it's not very strong. And then if a player makes a character that is very strong, then nobody uses it because it's very strong, and they would rather just use an official game element, instead of one of our custom league game elements. Uh, so very very little of our custom league stuff actually gets used. But I try to use it when I can. Um, but the key point here is that players want to create something. Generally, they want to create something that's very strong. Going back to the Phoenix bystander, here we go. We've made it all the way around the block. We're back to what we want to talk about here. The Phoenix bystander, I think, is a good example of a character that was intentionally designed to be very strong, but suffers from I don't know how I want to describe this, or how do I want to label this kind of um, symptom of player created game elements, which is that players who generally create these game elements for actual hero clicks, like they're legal hero clicks, are good players. They're usually very good players. So a lot of these game elements are created by the player who won Worlds, or the player who won a a very large and very competitive event. So these are good players. They understand what game elements are strong, and they understand why they're strong. And they also understand that other game elements, which may be not very strong currently, but they understand how those game elements could be extraordinarily strong, if not game breaking, if they were given a certain other ability. So it becomes a game of a player wants to create this game element. They go, hey, I want it to have this certain ability. And that ability may be more or less innocuous at first glance, but the player secretly in the back of their mind, whether they know it or not, they have a what I'm just going to call a broken combo. But they have a combo in mind of how they want to use this piece. And it may or may not be the best way to use this piece, but it is for sure an extraordinarily strong way to use an ability that they're giving to this custom game element, right? Um, and it becomes a game where they send it off to WizKids. They go, here's what I want, and it's up to WizKids and the WizKids rules team to figure out what that combo is. They kind of have to become mind readers and to go, what is this guy or girl? What are they, or group of people? What do they want? What do they want to do? What do they want this piece to do? What is the broken combo, quote unquote, that they have in mind for this piece? So, um, so then they have to kind of go through and figure out, like, okay, well, is the ability that they have, or that they want this piece to have, is it does it limit design space? Does it mean that if we create a character in the future that has an ability that would normally not be very strong, because of this custom game, I say custom game element, but because of this player created game element, uh, does it mean that if we create abilities in the future that they're going to be too strong? You know what I mean? So I feel like the Phoenix Bystander is something that falls right into that category, which again, it's props to the Phoenix Nest with an F. Props to them for getting this thing even made, because they know better than any of us, better than me, what this piece is capable of. And Brad from the Bradcast Show did make a Facebook post about this, using a innocuous um, combo, saying, like, here's an example where the Phoenix Bystander is strong in places where you wouldn't normally expect it to be strong. So first, okay, so let's go over what this Bystander does. So first, it's 10 points. It's got sidestep. It's got telekinesis. It's got barrier, and it has leadership. Whoa. All right. Kind of kind of already it's the one of the best bystanders ever made, right? Just with those standard powers. Um, I personally don't think bystanders with leadership should exist. This is just a personal standpoint for me because I feel like a bystander with leadership is it's either going to be used on a large percentage of teams because it means that you don't have to play leadership on another character, potentially, or it's gonna be unplayable because it's too many points. So, but this bystander is only 10 points, so it's definitely playable because it's also, like I said, it's also got barrier, which is good on every single team. It also has telekinesis, which is good on every single team, and it has sidestep, which is good on every single character. But we're not done yet. It's Billy Mays just jumped out and said, "But wait, there's more." He burst out of his grave. But wait, there's more. It also has Mastermind, and you're gonna go, well, wait a minute. It's got so it can mastermind to things that are less points than it, or share a keyword, and it doesn't have any good keywords, and it's only 10 points. But no, 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 no. It has the ability, which this is the ability that they got it slipped under the rug. They made it look like it's not that impactful, but it is an insanely strong ability which gives every character on your team the same keyword. I don't know what that keyword is, but it's written out. But it basically just says, keyword blah. Every friendly characters have the blah keyword. What I don't know, again, I'm not reading it, so I don't know what the keyword is. So um but that's wild. And it seems like at first glance, and I know even from a casual standpoint, because I was explaining this ability to a few players at my local event earlier today, and a lot of them were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that seems pretty good." Everybody has the same keyword. Like, "Oh, okay, so it could mastermind to anybody on your team now. Oh, that's pretty good. Oh, yeah, it could use leadership on anybody on your team now. Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good." And it's like, whoa, whoa, okay, so, but I don't think WizKids properly looked at all of the combos that this piece can currently do, and it definitely limits the design space of every character moving forward. So the TLDR of this piece is that I look for the Phoenix bystander to either be banned in modern if its availability is extraordinarily limited, or look for it to have early retirement, just like the Scott Porter pieces. So, because I do think it is that strong. Will it be seen on every single team? Potentially, potentially no. I mean, like I said, I still think for 10 points, just with its standard powers, it's wild. The fact, like I said, the fact that its leadership works on every single character, the fact that it's just by barrier, TK, and all that stuff. I think that is still good, but it has wild potential. The fact that it just says every friendly character shares a keyword with every other friendly character. Period. So when now and for all time moving forward, every time you have an effect that is worded similarly or in the vein of, you know, choose a friendly character that shares a keyword, right? Anytime you see an effect like that, uh, because the Phoenix bystander exists, that will always be true. So it, or I shouldn't say it's always true, but in reality it replaces instead of saying choose a friendly character that shares a keyword, it now that effect reads choose a friendly character, right? Because they all share a keyword. Every character shares a keyword. So anything that says do something or pick a friendly character that shares a keyword doesn't matter. It just says pick a friendly character, right? So effects that are extraordinarily strong, but are designed with the intent that they work with characters that have a very specific and maybe like a more rare keyword to have. Um, then like I would anticipate effects moving forward instead of saying, choose a friendly character that has, that shares a keyword. I would look for effects now to be printed that say like choose a friendly character with the blank keyword. You know what I mean? So therefore Phoenix doesn't do anything because you know but I'm just worried that that may not happen. For example, um right now like you know popular Alpha Strike combos are using Diana or they're using Zala Jor-El. So Diana's popular because she doesn't need to actually hit with the attack; she just needs to make the attack. But Zala is also popular because she's a little bit less points in the sense that she doesn't require a an equipment in order to Alpha Strike. Ooh, you get you get a yawn for free in this podcast. Um, but Zala is also good, like I said, because she doesn't require an equipment, but she's also good. She her attacks can't be mastermind. Her attacks also can't be like she basically has precision strike. In the sense that damage can't be reduced below one, and blah blah blah. But whatever. But again, currently, what does their card say? It's like, oh, when they hit or when they make an attack, if it was the first attack this turn, then you choose a friendly character with that shares a keyword and place them adjacent. All right, well, what did I just say Phoenix Nest does? It gets rid of that shares a keyword thing. It just says now their effect says choose a friendly character and place them adjacent. So I'm not saying that those specific examples break the game, but there's clearly the limitation of their power or of that ability, I guess I should say, was that uh you can only bring over characters that share a keyword. There are, of course, uh, uh, a plethora of ways to quote unquote chi word. I literally almost said chi word keat. Oh Lord, there's plenty of ways to keyword cheat and give Diana and give Zala Jarrell whatever keyword you want, right? Especially in Silver Age and whatever. But that's not what we're talking about here. So keyword cheating aside, their their limitation is that look, if you want to use them and you want to use them well and you want to pull a character all the way across the map and use it with a great Alpha Strike combo, you're going to have to find somebody who shares a keyword, right? Or you're going to have to find a way to give them other keywords that so you can expand your um, potential list of characters to pull over with an Alpha Strike. Um, and usually the keyword cheating options have a cost to them, which is more than 10 points. So usually, if you are planning on doing that, you would say, I have to spend some points on another, bringing in another character, which gives this guy this, keyword, and then now since they both have this keyword, during force construction or during establishing theme teams or what have you. But for only 10 points, you guarantee that every single character on your team shares a keyword. So, as I mentioned, now Diana and Zala virtually say like when they make an attack or when they hit, respectively. If it's the first attack, blah, blah, blah. It just says choose a friendly character and place them adjacent. That's all it says now. And again, is that a problem? I don't think it's currently a problem. But again, I'm not looking at HC units, not staring at it. I'm not seeing like what is the best character to move all the way across to the other side of the map. Obviously, I think Kong is a good example, but Kong already worked with Diana. So, is there something better than Kong? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. There's gotta be. There's gotta be something that's better than Kong. Um, but I'm not sure off the bat what it is. So again, like I said, I don't think that breaks the game necessarily right now. But I guarantee you there is some combo that the Phoenix Nest team is aware of that they want. They're like this. They're like, we have a combo and it requires that these two characters share a keyword. But dang, currently there's no way of keyword cheating these people to make them have the same keyword, or maybe there is a way to do it, but it costs too many points. So what if we could only do what if we could do it for any character, for all characters, for only 10 points? Like, wow, wouldn't that be insane? And I feel like that's they were thinking of one example, probably, but it ended up turning into something that works for all characters now. So I do think this specifically limits design space moving forward because, like I said, I don't think you can print very many strong effects that specifically uh, work for um, uh, oh, if you can hear my wife, that's because she's talking through a camera and I'm going to walk away from her now. She's going to be like, why are you leaving? So the let's go over here now. What the hell was I doing? She made me lose my train of thought. But yeah, okay, so we're talking about Phoenix Nest. Like I said, I don't think it does anything extraordinarily broken currently, unless Phoenix Nest has an idea of something broken that I'm just not thinking of. But I just don't like that it limits design space in the sense that we can't print characters in the future that have an effect that requires you to pick a friendly character that shares a keyword and have that effect be strong. Because if that effect is strong, then that would mean that they would have to print it on a character, usually print it on a character that doesn't have very good keywords, right? But now every character shares a keyword with everybody. So it's like, ugh, those effects can't be made anymore. They will have to specifically require that you pick a character with a specific keyword. Similarly to like in Smash and Destroy, how we're seeing a lot of effects that works like specifically with the brute keyword, right? So we might see a lot more of that. But yeah, I mean, it's there's, as Brad pointed out, there's a lot of effects that work. Specifically, like not game breaking effects, but they're effects that work with characters share a keyword. Um, but it's do I want to say nefarious? Do I want to use that word? Yeah, we'll use that word um, to be hyperbolic. uh, the effect of making everybody have a keyword and making everybody share a keyword, I feel like that's a nefarious effect in the sense that there's not going to be anything quote unquote nice and balanced uh that that arrives from that effect. I feel like the only competitive game, the only competitive combos or effects that arise from characters sharing a keyword are going to be ones that are not healthy for the game in a competitive standpoint. I don't know. Maybe I'm a pessimist when it comes to that, but I feel like having every single character always share a keyword all the time. Of course, yeah, you can just argue with me, oh, well, you can just KO the Phoenix. It's like, yeah, true, but it does have mastermind, and it can mastermind to every single opposing, it can mastermind to anybody. Um, and then it's like by the time that you're going to come all the way across the map and KO a Phoenix, it's like, well, then congratulations, I'll give you 10 points. You can KO Phoenix, and then whatever character you just sent to KO Phoenix, I'll KO that, and then I'm ahead in points, so I'm winning the game still. So I don't know. It's like I said, the Diana Zala combo that stands out to me because it's like, okay, now you can literally bring over any single character in the game, including ones that aren't out yet. So if there's a character that's doesn't have a very good move and attack ability, but has some insane ability to affect characters like within a certain number of squares, then suddenly they automatically are cool. We'll throw you on a Diana or Zala team, and you'll automatically be able to activate your whatever effect you have, and again, does that seem like a good thing for the game? And to say like, look, I have a character that does something that but it requires that I give them a costed action like when I'm within like 2 squares of you, right? And they don't have any sort of like move and attack or anything like that. And like, oh well, don't worry, you just use Diana, and you can literally place any character on any square on the map virtually, and now you win the game. Like it's like I don't know. It's like does that seem fun? I don't know. It doesn't seem fun. It seems like we would be moving back into the realm of like I say words and then I win the game. I don't like games generally like that. So I don't know. I'm optimistic about the Destroyer. I'm a little pessimistic about Phoenix Nest Bystander. But both are extraordinarily strong. I think, like I said, I think Destroyer is strong because it's a consistency driver, but I don't think it breaks the game. Like I said, I think there's plenty of things and plenty of ways to build around it. And I think though that they will be required. One or more of them will be required from a competitive standpoint. But again, I'm happy to be wrong on that standpoint. But Phoenix Nest, I think if it's not widely available, it will be oppressive in the sense that that very little people will have it initially. And then I feel that while it may not be used as widely as Destroyer in the sense that like I think Destroyer is going to be almost on every team. So it may not be used as widely as Destroyer, but on the teams that it is used, it will be stronger than Destroyer in the sense that whatever combo they have brewed up, because of the fact that everybody shares a keyword. I think that's going to be stronger than just +2 defense or whatever. So yeah, so I'm not looking forward to Phoenix shenanigans. But who knows? Hopefully, I never have to go up against anybody using it. Um, but I don't know. Something tells me that I will eventually. So yeah, I have no idea how long I've been rambling on for. Let's see. How long have I been rambling? A fucking long time. All right. I don't have a nut butter commercial prep for this one because this is a kind of on the fly thing. I literally have no script, no topics, no nothing. I just wanted to talk about those two things, and I wanted to talk about them quickly. God damn it! Which means I'm talking about them for probably fucking 2 hours. So let's wrap it up here. talk to you guys next time. Um, yeah, hopefully we see some cool stuff from Lantern Legacy, from X-Men 97, and from that the Doctor Strange. The name of that set escapes me, but hopefully we see some cool stuff from those sets. So looking forward to it. Talk to you next time. Bye bye.